Hello everyone, welcome back in another video. I am Vaibhav. In our today's video, we are going to see life cycle of exception object. Today is the date. Today's date is 10th of August 2022, and we are going to see our topic. So before going towards our topic, let's we see what is exception. So exception is nothing but that is the as we see if we are seeing in dictionary the meaning of exception means that the thing which is not predefined, that means which thing is happened suddenly or not pre-planned things, that is the exception. As in our previous video we are see the example of that, that is the uh, let's suppose if we are working on a desktop, that time whole code is or a whole program project is uh, written on on a desktop. If suddenly light is off, power is cut, that time that is not predefined the power cut. That's why the power cut exception is produced in this case. So for overcome those exception, we are using some mechanisms. That mechanisms we are called as exception handling. So we are seeing all those things, what is exception and what is exception handling. As we know, whenever we are writing any code, that time that code will be executed with the help of a JVM mechanism. That time any that what which code is written within the main method, that time JVM creates one thread for the same, and that thread can travel throughout the main method, and the work of thread is that to execute each and every term which is written within the main method. If any method is not called by the main method or not include in the main method, that block or that code is not executed, because that thread uh, cannot access that specific code or that specific method unless we are not mentioning that method or that code within the main method. Okay, that is the thread. While we discussing about thread, we are seeing in next point. So for understanding the life cycle of exception, we take one example on it. Let's suppose we are writing code for a arithmetic calculation. Suppose I am writing as within a one class in main method, I can write as a one calculation, that is int a is equal to 10, int b is equal to 0, and int c is there. And I have to include one more printing command, that is sysout calculation is there. And after that calculation, I am giving one more command, one more line of code, that is the calculation is c is equal to a by b. That means c is equal to 10 by 0. And after that I am giving a one more sysout, that is system.out.println, and I am printing the value of c which is calculated before that sysout. So that time when we are executing that program, our our code will or our compiler can show us an error. That occurring error is arithmetical exceptional error, because we are doing what we are doing. We are doing that there is a one integer value, that is the 10, and we are dividing that integer value with the 0. So that time that goes in infinite. So Java cannot can't JVM can't know how to handle that exception. That's why the thread get eliminated or thread get end in this case. That time it does not give us output, but any line, any code or any command is given before that line, that command will be executed. We are writing this sort of calculation before that line of code. That because of that it shows that line, it show on display calculation, and after that it show the thread is not in working. It shows the reason of why what exception is produced and what in which line, sorry, in which line exception is produced, and the through overall information about that thread, like in which class, in which method, in which line, and which parameter of exception that exception can occurs. And that's why we are easily understand that exception is occurring within that case. But main disadvantage in this case, that is when the exception is produced occurs, that time that exception or that thread goes towards the JVM, because JVM having a runtime environment for the our JDK. That's why it goes towards the JVM, and JVM identify that if any mechanism to handle that exception is present, that time it can continue to that thread, or if any mechanism is not present for handling that exception, that time that thread get eliminated and our JVM shows us a error. It shows us directly arithmetical error in this case. So after that, so that is the main major problem, because our thread is eliminated. That time any code of line or any block of code is written behind that or behalf of that line. We are calling that line at line which when any exception is produced, that line we are called as a risky line. So if whenever any risky line is present in that code, so after that our thread get eliminated and the code which is written behind after that risky line, that code does not executed. That's why the other code is not displayed or not in the execution. So that is the major problem. That's why we have to handle that execution for achieving 100% execution of the code, or if any execution is happen, we have to handle that execution. For the handling the execution, Java can provide some mechanisms. As in our previous video, we are seeing some mechanisms like try, catch, throws, and finally. So let's see one of the mechanism in this case. Let's suppose we are writing that risky line within our try block. So syntax for try is try, and there is a two curly braces, open and close curly braces. We can write that risky line within the try block, and we also getting one more catch catch mechanism is there, and within that catch mechanism we are providing the exception handling. So as we see, when thread having any exception, it goes toward the JVM checks if there is a handling mechanism is present. That time JVM can create a object for handle that exception. So that output by the JVM is written within that our catch block. We can write as catch, and within that parenthesis we are writing the exception name, that is in this case that is the exception occurs, that is our arithmetical exception. And there is a one more variable is not variable, there is a one more object reference is there. That reference we are giving any name for that, like ABC, any we are giving that name for that object reference. That reference is created by the JVM. So that time the any thread is occur, that time the JVM can create the object for that exception, and it's give a command for the thread to continue the code remaining after that risky line. Because of that, we are able to achieve 100% of execution of code by handling that exception. In our scenario, we see how our exception is occur, what the actually work of exception is done. That is exception is occur because if there is a condition which is not predefined or suddenly happening, this condition is there, that time it occurs, and we are saying working of exception, that it goes towards the JVM. If any mechanism is present within the code, JVM can avoid to eliminate that thread, and it continues the code. If there is not any mechanism is present, that time JVM can shows that on a display. If that thread is eliminated, that time JVM can show on display the exception type, its location, its file, its line, or that risky line can be shown by the JVM. That is the working of that our that is the working of our exception. And after that, if mechanism is not present, that time our exception get end. That is the end of the our exception. And by using that mechanism, we can able to handle that exception. That is the overall flow. But when we are so there is a one more condition is that exception samely work like if else. That is not actually if else, but it's simply like as if else. So we are writing that risky line within try block, and we are giving the solution for that try in catch block. So if exception is occurs, that time catch block can execute and it continue that thread behind the risky line. If there is not any presence of exception or not occurring the exception, that try block directly execute and it continues the code. So that time there is no need of so that time there is a catch block is not executed. So that is how overall about life cycle of exception object. Thank you.